we now come on to one of the most popular played moves in our mainline variation here, and that's Queen A5. So hopefully you know the starting order and why we're playing these moves now. And we're going to deal with Queen A5 here, then Queen H5, and then you can chill, which I think you deserve, because you've learnt E4, E5 then, pretty much. It's still the Petrov, but you're getting there. Okay, so let's have a look. So do try to play along. And bishop c4, most aggressive square to make our gambits more effective. Knight to f6. And now in this position we can't castle because our pawn can be grabbed on e4. So we do play d4 here. And now capturing is certainly the best move. We castle, offering the second pawn. Bishop c5, the other main line, but we covered that. So knight takes e4, played, and we of course play the most aggressive move, rook e1, forcing d5. And now we've got to keep that aggression up. We can't start retreating. So bishop takes d5, force sequence, queen takes, and now the point behind our play, knight to c3. In this video, queen to a5. And this is a very important move to be able to play against. Why? Because it's black's most popular choice. So statistically, all statistics are of course correct in life. Well, these ones are. This is what you're most likely to face. And here, why is the queen go over there in a lot of games? Well, the black queen goes over there because it's trying to stay out of trouble, a bit like me in my younger years. And it's also trying to keep a little bit of activity. So in some cases, this queen can affect our back rank. Now, if you watched the last video, what do you think you take on e4 with? And this is already an important moment. Like, if you can't remember the theory, we're all going to forget theory at times when we play, until we drill ourselves and play thousands of games in the variation. But if you do forget it, it's those general principles, which I hope these videos are going to really help you with to understand the ideas. You've got to take the knight back now, really. And in this position, do you take the rook or the knight? Well, you take with the knight. Taking on d4 doesn't work there, but we don't need to investigate that. But why are you taking with the knight here? Well, again, it's to do with where the queen goes. In this structure, we're taking with the white because we're aiming for a direct attack against black's king. Because the queen is a little bit offside there, and that means it can't support black's main defensive move in this position, bishop e7. The queen on d8, black's supporting that bishop. So our second move, we normally go knight takes e4 and then bishop g5. Our second idea, bishop g5, becomes more powerful after bishop e7 because the bishop is not defended by the queen anymore. Now, you only take the rook in these positions when you want to take back the pawn on d4. I'd say this is your second option if knight takes is not working. Because after even, let's say, bishop e6 here, your knight is now not very well placed, and you have to take on d4. But this is actually very bad, because after castle's queenside, you've gone pawn grabbing, but black's suddenly got you under pressure. So there is actually even a very tangible reason we don't take with the rook. But if you're thinking of what one you take with, I always really want to take the knight because it's more aggressive, and it combines with this plan of stopping black castling. I only take the rook when black's king is a bit safer and we want to grab that pawn back with the rook, but we want to maybe attack the queen. So knight takes. And now, as nearly always in this situation, there are two options. There's either bishop e7, which is actually maybe in this case, not the main option, I'd say, because now that the queen, the black queen, is well out of the way, we just saw in that last line, the idea of castling queenside is much more attractive for black here. So I'd say the main move in this case is bishop e6, trying to get that king to the queen side, because the queen side feels a bit safer because the rook's very nice on d8. So let's have a look at bishop e7 first, which again is still played quite often. What do we do against this? Well, bishop g5, and you should really know this move by now. This is our standard follow-up to keep the pressure on the black king. And, you know, with a queen on d8 here, f6 is playable. But with the queen not helping the defense, f6 is actually a very common move, but it's best to be avoided for black. And we should be very happy when this occurs, because what can we do here? Well, again, in this line, we're going for extra aggression, and we're going for bang, 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 bang. We're going straight for our opponent's king. So we don't want to retreat. We don't move our bishop there to retreat. So you're looking at sacrifices. And here, knight takes f6 is a very strong way to do things. Taking with the bishop, not so clear. The king can come to f7, but this one is just strong. It has to be captured, and now bishop takes. And we have quite a great amount of compensation here. This happened in a correspondence game going back to 2006 between Reboard and Gala Bingo. Anyone remember that? I've been a couple of times, you know, when I was looking for a watering hole. Very strange experience. And in actual fact, the sample game here, well, bishop f6 is clearly the way to play, isn't it? I mean, what else can you do? And now it's actually very simple to play this. Let's say the rook has to move, and it's best to try and chase that bishop away. So rook to f8 is best, forces our bishop to move, and now we take on e7, forcing knight takes e7, and here just a simple move, queen takes d4. We have 2 pawns for the piece, so we're nearly materialistically doing okay. But it's the black king, quite often the bane of black's position. And with ideas of even taking on e7, of rook d1, of even doubling up here, the black king can't get safe. It just can't get safe. So this is a lot of pressure. I mean, black might be holding on here, but it's not fun for black to play. And one mistake, dead. So I think black should try to exchange queens with queen b6. Of course, we don't exchange queens. Queen e5, threatening mate. And now queen d6 looks sensible. Again, trying to defend the knight, exchange queens. We, of course, keep the queens on the board. And I like this square e4 because we're trying to back up our investment here. You know, when you've sacked a piece, you often are committed to, you know, having a successful attack. But in some cases, if you can grab enough material on the way, even if your attack fails, you're going to have a good booty of gold. Sound like a pirate. And in this case, we're just hitting those 2 pawns. If we can win 1 more pawn, we've got our investment back. And now c6 kind of seems like a way that black might want to get the bishop in the game. And here, well, we don't want to grab that one yet because, again, we are attacking. Tempo is key. So let's of course bring our rook to d1 first and look at these open files. You can just see this is fantastic comp. The queen has to stay on the knight. That's the only square. And taking here is going to allow bishop f5. Maybe black can defend. But a very smart move now is queen b4. Keeping black tied up. And this is thinking about what black wants to play. He wants to move his bishop. But if he does now, well, we certainly take on b7 because we're gaining tempo. And we might just grab all of these pawns, you know, on the queen side. So this keeps black tied down. It keeps the pressure up against the knight there. and it also controls d6, meaning our rooks can use these open lines. So let's say rook to g8, and now we can come in with rook d6. Queen g7, I think, is best here. This one doesn't work. You see why? Well, rook takes e7 is very nice. If the king moves to f8, that's checkmate. And after this one, we have discovered check, winning the queen. So queen g7, threatening mate. And then this is also often a move you want to play just when g2 is starting to be a little bit moist, you know, like a wobbly wall. The wetter it gets, the more it might fall down. And again, this is often, when g2 is attacked, it's often just a one-move threat, and we need a one-move solution. And here, g3. These pawns can look after themselves here. Black still can't develop the bishop, so maybe something like rook f8. And now our pieces are just improving and improving. And with knight to e5, black is still under this constant pressure. And this is just what we want from our gambit course. Again, it's even hard to find a move for black here. This is the other thing when you're gambiting. I always say this, it's a lot about patience. And this position, you have been showing patience. You're not going crazy. But as long as you understand and you work out what your opponent wants to do and you stop those ideas, then he can often run out of moves. And this position is actually, funnily enough, getting to the mindset of thinking what black can play. He doesn't have many moves. And we got ideas of coming into d8. We got numerous ideas. I like that simple doubling up there, threatening the rook coming in. Also threatening rook d7. It's not just, you know, threatening this rook to here if we get the queen behind it. Black is pretty much lost here. So this bishop e7 actually is only playable after bishop g5 as long as black doesn't play f6. And this is why we're playing this knight takes now. f6 is a move that black can fall into and get in a lot of trouble because we're just going to smash through. Now, another bad move here would be bishop e6. And again, this has been played by some very strong players. The game Shevchenko versus Matlakov, 26 plus 100 Grandmaster, 2009, okay, a while back, but it shows you that this is not just club level ideas here. Allows bishop takes e7. And this is normally our follow-up when we put the bishop on g5, because we're saying to black, okay, well, what are you going to take with? You take your king. I'm laughing because your king's stuck in the middle. So knight takes must be best. Also, taking with the king, we are going to just get our pawn back. Knight takes d4. So taking the knight, logical. And now we don't want black to castle queenside, so queen takes d4. And it may seem like black is okay. Black, of course, should castle here in this position. But so often, yeah, we're not going to win immediately. But we have, look at our pieces in the center. We have that central control. And there's a lot of tempting moves here. Moving a piece to c5 is tempting, but let's go the other way. It's a bit more fun. This bishop can't find a safe home. And after something like knight c6, this is still following that game of Matlakov. Queen over here is met easily by h6. And even then, we can, or bishop f5, sorry. Queen over here is met by bishop f5. That's the point. But queen f4 is much better. And this maintains pressure. Again, it's not a big advantage, but it's an advantage. And the point being, if bishop f5 now, and this is a move which black wants to often play, doesn't really want to lose that bishop. I think it's a very logical idea. Well, black's actually losing now. And there's a nasty trap here. Can you see the trap? Again, aggressive moves. We're looking for loose pieces. That bishop's a bit loose. And b4 is now very good. The queen is the only one who can stay on this one. And we've got c4 if it tries to go to one of these two squares. If the knight captures that one, then rook e5, picking up the piece. So going back to bishop g5, after bishop e6, we take here, slightly better. Castles, knight to g5, knight c6, queen f4. Rook e8 is a better move. And in this position, we've got to play a little bit quieter, but something like c3, just stopping that knight moving. Again, we have this better pressure with our nice pieces over here. Black's going to have to play h6 at some moment, and now we can just gain the better structure, queen e3, and white went on to win because this is a nice advantage. Yeah, I know I can't always give you checkmate. I'd love to, but I can't always. But this is you know, if I could get this position every game as white, I would, until I got really bored. So then I probably wouldn't. But I get bored of winning if I got this all the time. But this is just a target, right? It's just a target, and it's a very easy target to attack. So going back to this inferior move, bishop e7, bishop g5, obviously the logical move is for black to castle straight away. You know, this is clearly the best move, and this is quite safe. And again, we take on e7 because we want this pawn. There's no point taking with the queen now. We took with the queen before to stop black going queenside, but that's not an issue now. So let's take with the knight. And we have a very active knight pair in the center of the board. Knights are fantastic in the center. They're often better than the bishop pair when they're in the center. And we're following a correspondence game 2004. Min Iliga versus Vasilikis. And I feel white has a small yet steady advantage here. Again, there's no real fireworks. You're not going to win quickly here. But after something like knight g6, this c3 move is a very useful move to play. It stabilizes your knight. And the other idea is when black moves that bishop, do note that that bishop can't find a good square because of our knights. This is the problem that black has. It can't find a good square, and that is not a good square for the bishop. Now b4. And we're just using our space. And also this stops c5, so our knights remain here. And the game now continued queen a4. But here, white just simply took this one and went knight c5. And already white is really on his way to winning, I'd say here. You know, okay, requires some technique. And I say winning, of course, this is still a game, but it's a nice position. We're going to win a pawn, destroy black's queen side, and we've got a very simple position to play. So that's why in these variations, that after this knight takes e4, bishop e7 is inferior. That's why black should play bishop e6, and black should try to castle queenside. So now the main line here, which we're not going to go for, we actually found another very interesting way to play, a relatively new, relatively exciting idea where Richard's really gone deep into the theory part of it. The idea we're going to suggest, by the way, is bishop d2. We like this move. The main move is the logical knight g5. But we didn't want to pick this move because we felt that after black castles and we win the pawn back, yeah, we got our pawn back, and this is quite playable for white. But we thought that actually with this pawn on d5, we're a little bit cramped here. And I think a fair assessment of this position, which one of the main lines is equal. I mean, I think it's just the stronger player or the player with a better knowledge of this middle game will win. But we're not going for this because we don't always want to follow what everyone else does. Why do we want to do that? And we thought this little bishop d2 move would be a very good way to trick your opponent and keep causing problems. Again, we might get similar to positions to what we've seen, but why not put the bishop on d2, keep the threats going? And it has that surprise value, and it's also just not allowing the black queen to find somewhere safe to sit. You know, it can go wrong now. We're giving black options to go wrong. So where does the queen go? And blooming heck, there's a lot of moves here. Now, you don't castle here. This is not good because of the queen. So literally, there's a number of squares the queen can go to here. It's phenomenal. Queen h5, and we covered them all. Queen f5, queen a4, queen b6, queen b5, and queen d5. Now, the good thing that you should remember here, to try and simplify it, is that we're putting a piece on g5. In the majority of cases, it's going to be the knight, but we're hoping, like the last variation, though, we've got an extra tempo, and the black queen's going to be more misplaced, so we can take advantage of some things. In a couple of cases, so if the queen goes to, let's just get back there. If the queen goes to h5, if the queen goes to f5, so to the king side, or even b5 or d5, we're putting the bishop on that square. So it's kind of like, okay, what do you put there, the knight or the bishop? Are there any hard and fast rules to decide which piece you put there? Well, I think we've got to wait and see and think logically. Let's go through each of the queen moves and show you the variations. And at the end of showing you them, I think then it's a good idea to try to decide which piece you put there. Because the reason we're going to do it this way is you can first get a feeling of the variations before we make some rules to remind you. Now, Queen h5 would be a strange choice from a player who's prepared the queen coming over there to suddenly go all the way to the other side of the board. Because the good thing about this line for white is that after bishop g5, we're now into the next video. And the next video, let me just show you, is where black goes queen h5 in this position, knight takes, and bishop takes, bishop e6, bishop g5. So this would be a little bit odd that after bishop e6 here, bishop d2, for black to play queen h5. And we do cover that in the next video. Bishop g5, stopping castling. So we don't have to worry about that yet. Now queen f5 is very rare. And in this case, again, it makes more sense to put the bishop here. Why is that? Well, the queen going here is trying to defend on e6. So moving the knight here is less effective because black can castle, and we're not even going to win that pawn immediately here. So knight there doesn't have as much punch. So a much more logical move is bishop g5, stopping black castling. And this leaves black still with the problem of where he's going to put his king. Not easy to find a good square. Moving his bishop on f8 now looks natural to try and go this way. So where can you put that bishop? Well, bishop c5 is a very loose square. The queen is kind of overloaded in this position, and we can just play knight h4. And these kind of ideas, knight h4, very, another idea you really want to remember when the queen is on f5. The queen only has really one square. It doesn't want to run into the line of the rook. And we should yet again look at ways to undermine that queen. And there's a way we can get a winning position by playing c4. This is the nice move. If en passant happens, the simplest is to take the queen, get rid of the defender of the bishop. And once that's happened, we can take the knight. The only way that, obviously queen here runs into rook c1. That's our idea. And queen e5, well, we can move our knight and win the queen. But actually here, f4 is even more pretty. The queen has no way to go. There's one check, we just move the king. Okay, now the queen's out, but it's not gonna work very well. We've got f5 coming, we're winning a piece. So queen f5 is a line where black has to be a little bit careful. We go bishop g5. Where else can a bishop go? Well, a better square is d6, because at least that's not loose now, and that's more secure. This happened in Shrezhnikov Geller, very famous players in Sochi, 1983. And here, well, we should now just take on d4. We haven't got any immediate tactics. We can't stop black castling kingside. So when we've got no immediate tactics, these knight moves not as strong because the queen can whip its way back over there. We just have to go. We can always take this pawn. That's kind of the good thing with this variation. If we're ever getting a little bit worried, we just whip that pawn off, right? We're just like, okay, I'm going to get an equal material position. And often when we do whip that pawn back, we're going to have an advantage. And that is, I feel, a slight advantage here where we can play risk-free. Now, the Geller game actually went castles. And now after knight takes d6, clearly the bishop should be captured. Because if you capture the knight here, well, you're going to lose this pawn, and only white can win this position. So now queen takes g5, and now after knight e4, queen d5, it was agreed to draw. But in actual fact, myself and Richard believe that white has a small, like, don't know what that hand gesture is, a small nibble. And again, you're going to get that. A lot of these gambit lines, if your opponent plays perfectly, you're not going to win quickly, are you? But if you can still retain a way to play and pressurize him risk-free, that's not bad. A lot of people play openings with that idea in mind from move one anyway. And with queen c3, we feel that because of our extra pressure, I say we, me and Richard, our open line, and actually we like our knight here in the center, there's something. For example, let's say black tries to exchange queens, because that seems like a way to, again, try to equalize. Well, now we can take here and play b3. And our knight coming to c5 is a little bit annoying for black. We've got an open file as well. Magnus Carlsen would love playing this position as white. Bishop d5, otherwise it will get hit on e6. And now knight c5 doesn't make quite as much sense because the bishop's defending there, but let's keep annoying that bishop. Knight c3. And this doesn't just menace the bishop, but it gains the tempo for our rook to have ideas that come into the 7th rank. And also our knight can keep being annoying on b5. And I feel that white has can certainly play this on risk-free here. There's no risk to white's position. Our piece is a bit better. Maybe black can draw this, but black has to fight for the draw. So after queen a5, and now we take the knight as discussed. We're looking at the better move, bishop e6. Black's trying to castle queenside in this position. And with black trying to castle queenside, the main move is knight on e to g4, but we're not going for that. We're going to try to play bishop d2, and this is going to also unbalance black here. Black's going to be hopefully he doesn't start rapping like that at the board. That'd just be weird. I remember once I was playing a rapid tournament. I was playing a very nervous character, and he was completely winning. He was like a rook up, but it was before the days of increment, and he had about a minute left. I had about 3. And I was going to resign, but then, I mean, chess is a cruel game. So before you say, oh, you nasty man, you know, you want to win, don't you? And it was still a bit complicated. I was still punting some attack. He was a strong player, 2200. And he was so nervous that he couldn't move the pieces. And as much as I felt sorry for him, I still thought, yeah, okay, I've got a chance, because he tried to move the pieces, and his hand, you know, this is, you know, with a mouse maybe he's better, but this is when actually you have wooden pieces. It couldn't move the piece, and I put him in check, and he moved his king from a position of check into check again. So I checked his king, and he moved into check, and I was like, I'm sorry, but that's illegal. So then you called over the arbiter, and the arbiter gives you an extra minute on the clock, pretty useless. And gives him another chance of moving. And then he did the same move again. He moved in check on the 2nd time. And I was just like, this guy is completely collapsed. He completely collapsed. And then he blundered his queen a couple of moves later. So it's, yeah, maybe your opponent will do that here. Probably not. So queen f5, bishop g5. And the bishop moves promise us something. Now, h6 is logical. I mean, f6 is really asking for some major problems on the e file. It's far too loosening, that move. And against this, I'd be looking now at ways to annoy the queen, which is defending that one. So now we come back to some idea like knight to h4. This move, remember, very useful. And if queen d5, we even have bishop f6, right? And this is the kind of tactical ideas you're looking for. So h6 is better. And here we wanted to recommend queen d3 here, which sets a little trap of check and taken on d3. But in actual fact, again, we check all these ideas of the computer, and after the queen comes back, the queen is coming to a6. Well, we're not recommending queen d3. We're actually recommending bishop h4. So let's just stick with our main recommendation. Again, we don't want black to castle, so this is the only square. And again, there's a number of options and a number of ways that black can go wrong in this position. Very quickly, he has to, well, let's say he can go wrong. If he goes g5 here, he's really weakened his king. He wants the castle next move, but that's why we're trying to look for, before we look at bishop g3, of course we should be searching for other possibilities here. Throughout this course, if your opponent suddenly threatens to consolidate, you need to look for ways to keep the fire burning. And knight takes d4 is the move. And after this one, it has to be taken. We're attacking the rook. And this is actually just game over because, well, we don't even take the rook here. Knight f6 check is even stronger. And this happened in that famous guy we saw earlier, Estrin, Soviet player, 1963. And we saw this kind of idea when the knight pops back here and black resigned. Very nice. That Estrin, bit of a ledge. So g5, too weak. Now, what about bishop b4? Trying to develop with tempo. Well, here we play knight takes d4 again. And we want to take the opportunity to attack. And this is actually, this simple knight takes d4 is a very strong threat. And the problem with the bishop being here, okay, you have to take here again, is now that black has to move his bishop. If black could castle here, he has some chances of equality. But here he has to take our rook. And he might be thinking, yeah, a rook. But now we take on g7, he can't castle. His king is trapped. And he's got to play something horrible like king here. And now we just go rook takes e1 with the exchange down. But do I need to point out the compensation here? Hopefully not. Hopefully you're convinced just by looking at this position. You can pause the video and call me an idiot or work out why it is compensation at any moment. So another move that's not right is bishop b4. Queen h5 is a little strange because it allows our familiar tactic, which we saw in the model games at the start, which we're going to see in the next video, bishop f6. And this is very useful. You might think, well, that's a little bit loose there, but it's, again, we're just keeping the pressure on and we're stopping black doing, again, this is about stopping black doing the moves he wants to play. If he moves that bishop, we take on g7. So we're actually tying him down with this seemingly aggressive move. It's more of a bow constrictor than a killer. And now after something like queen g6, well, we can play knight h4 again. I don't know what else black can play apart from queen g6 here, but let's have a look at this. And if queen g4, well, we keep the queens on the board. Obviously, queen d3 and all the white's pieces are actually very secure. And we have simple ways to improve. Rook d1, h3. We can also take here, but we shouldn't be in a rush to because it will allow black to castle. What does black play? Again, this is one of those situations where you should ask yourself, not just what am I doing, what is my opponent doing? It's quite even like Eastern philosophy, isn't it? It's like, not me, what is my opponent doing? This is what you need to do to become that ruthless warrior monk. Oh, I actually was going to, I once, like a long time ago, 10 years, paid to go to the Shaolin training place in China to train in Shaolin Kung Fu for 6 months after a breakup. But then it didn't happen in the end. So goodness knows where I'll be now if I'd have taken that path. Instead, I've just got a little bit fatter and done chess, or a lot fatter and done chess, which is more comfortable. So I'm actually turning to more of a Buddha than a Shaolin monk. I've gone that route. Okay. So queen h5, a little strange here. And the best move is, well, I mean, this is the problem that black has. He hasn't got any easy moves. And if he goes bishop c5, then we don't have knight h4 anymore, which worked very well before. So bishop c5 might be just about okay. But we do have a very interesting idea. And again, fantastic work to Richard Palliser for finding these moves. I mean, what a second Richard would be. And I understand why Blitz European champion Gwaine Jones uses Richard Palliser as a second. Richard, a tremendous player in his own right, strong international master. But the move we're playing now is b4. What a move, right? A critical sacrifice. Pursuing the initiative before black can castle. the philosophy behind this makes a lot of sense. And it's like we said before, as soon as black is ready to consolidate, let's look for drastic ways to stop that, even if we have to throw another bit of material, if we have to throw a man under the train tracks, or on the train tracks, under the train maybe, that I was trying to say. And this one, B4, this is actually you know, very tricky for black. What can black play? Well, if he plays bishop takes b4, we saw this idea previously, but he's now got an extra pawn. So we do the same line. Knight takes d4, knight takes, queen takes, hitting the bishop, and after bishop takes e1, queen takes g7. And we saw here previously that king d7 was played, but we had an extra pawn on b2. Now this position is maybe playable for black, but white's not worse. And I think, again, you can clearly see after a simple move like rook takes e1 that white has full compensation. He's 2 points down, a clear exchange down, but he has lots of attacking ideas in this position. And I think this is a lot of fun to play. So very nicely found by Richard again, this b4 idea. Now, if knight takes b4 in this situation, well, there's a number of tempting moves, but I think the simplest is knight just taking here. And we get the same kind of thing as before, but, you know, with our queen zooming in like this. And this is even stronger. And if bishop b6, and this is probably the most logical because black's trying to just get that bishop there and castle, we can now play a4, keeping that pressure up, keeping at a tempo. Tempo is so important. Black gets one more move, he's safe. Can't do that here. So he has to go a6 and now b5, keeping that tempo up. One more tempo, black's okay. But now black probably should take the rook. Queen takes here. And now block our queen's route with knight a5. And now we can take on d4. And at last, black's king gets to safety. But the key point in this position, and it's a very nice point, is bishop f6. This is a fantastic attacking move. Again, what brilliant moves in this course to find. It's not just the odd tactic that pops up in this course. Every single line is something spectacular. I love it. And this has actually occurred in a game. Karakovic, Kirchhoff, Amsterdam in 1964, when queen g6 is the move that black should play. But first of all, what happens if he takes the bishop? Well, this is a mistake, because we dive straight in. The king has to go in the line of the queen. And now knight d7, check. And after king here, we don't even grab the rook. We do, again, we're going back to things we talked about earlier. Can you find the move? What I mean by that is, if you can't do anything with your most active pieces, I'd say your queen and knight here. Your queen and knight, you might be able to just grab the rook with compensation, but always look, if your opponent's king is weak, at bringing in the reinforcements. What's my favorite maneuver, a maneuver we've seen time and time again in this course, the rook swinger. When there's an open g-file, bring them in. And after something like bishop takes d7, there's not really much else can be done. We are going to win the queen. We don't even need to take straight away and win the game. Okay, I'm going to run through this line again because sometimes I think it's worth repeating. And this is with queen f5, and this is the case where we should go bishop g5. We'll explain why again a bit later. And now h6 looks best. So after bishop h4, black has taken away the h4 square for our knight. So bishop c5 here, really the only move. And now b4, brilliant idea. Bishop b6, and now we keep trying to trap that bishop. And now after a6, we have this b5 move. And we're going to now force a piece away from this pawn. Black can't allow our queen into a8, so he's got a block. We now do this one. Black gets castled, but bishop f6. Queen g6, the last thing we need to look at in this line. And now, again, what is the move here? And I'm sure you should be able to find this one. Rook e3, the rook swinger again. g3, the ideal square. And this is also winning, so maybe queen g6 is better, but as long as we find rook e3, there's no real defense. After rook e8, we can even take on g7 and go rook g3, bishop g4, And now rook takes g4. This is just brutal, brutal stuff. And after here, check. Now, king f8 was played, because otherwise we take the queen with check. And now the key moment of this, we don't take the queen, because this one, oh, that would be embarrassing. But we do go knight h7 check. So we either are going to take the queen when the rook is blocked, or we're going to take the queen with our queen, and we're going to be checking and winning. Nice lines. So going back, queen f5, another option which doesn't really impress. So we're going to move on now to queen a4. Now, what should you put on g5 here? Again, take each individual case and think logically. The bishop or the knight? Well, in this case, I feel that the knight is much more logical, because by playing the bishop here, we've misplaced that queen. And compared to the main line, where you go knight here straight away, we have an extra developing move, and the queen doesn't have ways of swinging to the king side. So knight here makes more sense now. The other idea with moving our bishop to g5 is that we can often attack the queen with our knights when it's on the king side. That's why I was saying originally, when the black queen comes towards the king side, then we move the bishop there, because our knights can be very annoying. But in this case, the queen is so far away, we don't have any tempo gainers. So knight there is correct. Black should castle. And after knight takes e6, we don't even need to grab this one straight away. I actually now like knight g5. And we're going to regain the pawn minimum with a superior position. We're not worried about this pawn in this case. And the queen looks out of play, doesn't it? We've misplaced it. So we can go back to the more standard plan. And like I say, we're winning the pawn back. We're winning it back. And I feel we have a small edge in this rather unexplored position. No player puts their queen on a4, probably because of this reason. Something you should be happy playing, this position. So queen a4, not impressing. Queen b6 is the same philosophy. And now the queen is again a little bit misplaced. You might think, well, maybe a better square than a4. But if we go bishop g5, we haven't got any of those knight jumps annoying. So black can maybe just develop his bishop and castle. But now we should go knight g5, because this bishop is loose and the queen remains out of play. Black always has to castle at some point here. He hasn't got time to do anything else. And in this position, yet again, there's no point grabbing that one immediately. We should go knight g5. And this prioritizes activity over material gain. And let's, in this case, just look at things a little bit more deeper. Well, black has to avoid knight f7. So moving the rook to e8 is as good a move as any. And now knight takes e6. Our knight nicely positioned there. And here, bishop d6 is the best one. And now we're going to suggest the novelty. And it might look a little bit odd and passive, but it's just actually a good computer suggestion. Rook to b1. And the reason this looks passive, but it has some venom behind it. And the venom we have, again, is proving why we've gone bishop d2 straight away. This queen wants to run in, well, we want to play b4 to run into that queen. And again, we're taking that little subtle maneuver we did there, playing bishop here, queen here, to another level to try and gain a pleasant edge. And b4 is actually very annoying. I mean, you might want to take on g7, but I'm always a little bit worried about opening my king. I mean, taking on g7 is probably at some point okay, but I like rook b1. And what are we going to do here? Well, obviously, we've mentioned the move b4, but let's also talk about queen g4. Queen g4 is a very nice move to control the king side. This idea combined with b4 and a4 is very nice. Notice that black can't take on b4 because then a3 and we're going to win a piece. So this again, advantage to white. So queen b6, let's just have it also in this line. Let's have a look. Well, if black grabs on b2 straight away, well, this is very greedy. And it's a rare case when you can play this. And this is where we can demonstrate how Queen G4 is a useful move to play. Connecting our rooks, but great activity. This forces Black's king to move off that line. And now we just keep, again, when you've got opposite side castling, throughout this course, one thing you should be always aiming to do is creating threats. And you keep creating threats. At some point, hopefully your opponent won't be able to deal with the threats, so you cash in with a tactic. But here, there's no immediate tactic. Obviously, rook b1 looks tempting, but even stronger is bishop here, attacking c7. Because now the only good way for Black to defend that is bishop d6. And after we take this one, we've moved the defender away from Black's king, and we can play queen takes g7. And we have some very strong threats now, combined with rook b1 towards that square. Black's queen is in the wrong place in this position. I mean, let's say he plays rook g8. g2 is not a problem. It's only a problem if his queen can magic its way over there. And with queen to this square, we're threatening queen d6, rook b1, and or even queen c7 was maybe even stronger in this position. Actually, this is just winning, excuse me. And then rook b1 here, or queen takes d6. I mean, it's crushing. So there's some nice little lines here, and you can see the strength now, hopefully, in this main line of bishop d2. Bishop d2 is giving Black a number of ways to go wrong. And if his queen goes really passive, our idea of knight here, taking on e6 and bringing the other one in, has venom. So let's keep going. So what about queen b5? Well, queen b5 is a better square for the queen, because if we go knight g5 now and we try taking here, one of the rules we're going to see is if the queen keeps on the 5th rank, maybe knight g5 loses some of its venom. So we're going to go bishop g5 here. And again, you've got to think case to case, because if knight g5, well, after castles, this kind of thing, you can just see that the queen's better here. So like even in some of those last lines where we were taking here, we go bishop d6, and you can kind of see here, I think it's clear that this queen now has ways to come over. In the other positions, it couldn't come over to start attacking us. So this is one case after queen b5 where bishop g5 is played. So what we're seeing is, in general, at the moment, when the queen can come towards the king side, we move the bishop there. And now, let's say h6, we keep the pressure up, and now bishop c5. Otherwise, if bishop e7, we've seen this kind of thing. The problem with the queen being there is that when we take on d4, it's with tempo. So this kind of thing is going to be very annoying for Black because he can't castle. So bishop c5, I think, is the most logical. And now a4. And this is another way to just, show that the queen cannot find its home. Queen a5, I feel, is best. Queen c4 is an idea to try and centralize, when b3, queen d5, might give Black a feeling of security. And now bishop f6 would be one of our standard ideas. But an even stronger move here is a move we've seen a lot of times, not this one, but c3. And this is very interesting. This can't be taken because of the queen. And Black has this sort of problem with these pieces. They are centralized, but they're all loose. They're all just sort of hanging on by a thread. And this move c3 is really quite annoying for Black here, giving us an edge. So queen a5 is probably a better square. And again, a lot of this is quite new stuff. When I feel here, because Black's pieces are over again, c3, opening more lines, is the way to keep the activity. We're not going to win the pawn on d4 now, so we have to find other ways of doing this. And after d takes c3, b takes c3, Black does get castled. And this is maybe one of Black's better lines, actually. But after rook b1, White has sufficient activity for the pawn. Whether the rook gets to b7 or b5 is a problem that Black has. And Black is okay here. This is one of the better Black lines, but we're also okay. So equality, but it's equality where Black still is defending, and rook b5 is obviously the stronger of the threats here. And it's, you know, and also you could see that black's pieces are all on the queen side, so we might better launch something on the king side. Other ideas I'd be thinking of getting my queen to f4, because then I have ideas of sacrificing on f6. And if the g pawn moves, my queen can even come into h6. The reason I'm thinking of the king side is because I mentioned my opponent's piece is on the other side, meaning he hasn't got as many chances to defend. So I think these two simple ideas, rook and queen, will leave us well here. So queen a5, this queen b5 move, quite a rare move, but it's not so stupid for black. And now queen d5, and this is, I think, the move which is most logical and what I would consider to be the main line, because the queen has done its fun and now it can come back to the center. Why not put it on the center where it can keep defending that e6 pawn? Now, what do we play here? Logically, what do you move to g5 in this position? This square here. What do you move to this square? Well, knight here really doesn't make much sense, again, because black is nicely centralized, and after castling, he's defending that one. So it's much better to play bishop g5, and also we play this move when the queen remains on this line, because what we're trying to do is, instead of stopping castling, we're trying to prove the queen is available for our nasty tactics like bishop f6. We don't play this move when the queen's elsewhere, because we kind of need to have that queen as a target. So bishop g5 here, and we're trying to say your queen is a target to our bishop f6, for example. Tactics, maybe our c4 ideas at the right moment. And a number of moves have been played here again. Now, bishop d6 is the best move. Let's come to that last. Now, pawn to d3 is a way to try and give us a pawn weakness. But actually here, I'm just going to ignore that one and go bishop f6. And this is one of our common moves when the queen comes to d5 or h5. Because our bishop stops black from developing and it ties black down. And we're trying to just give his king nowhere to run. And now we're hoping for d takes c2, when after queen takes, black's whole plan seems to have just fallen away here. It's only helped us by opening up another file. The queen's got to get out, but we come to d1 anyway, and we got a very strong initiative down the open files here for one pawn. For example, queen g6, and now we have our common idea, knight h4, and actually here a very nice move, showing our domination and showing why bishop f6 is stopping our opponent moving, h3. And in actual fact, just bringing up g4, and it also saying to our opponent, this is how much I dominate the position. You have no good moves. Try to find a move for black here. Black doesn't have any good moves. And to demonstrate why our bishop's here, if bishop b4, of course, our idea is to take on g7, knight f6. So we can't even move that bishop. So d3 doesn't seem like the way black should go about things. Now bishop e7 is actually one of black's most popular moves, and the standard way to do this is to take on e7, misplace the position, and now if knight takes, well, this is where things are a little bit more boring. I would suggest queen takes d4, and in these positions, after something like castles, knight c5. And we have that little advantage that we've been commonly going for in these endings. You're going to have to go to this if black plays well, right? But it's still more pleasant for us. That bishop on e6, I just don't like that piece. It can't stabilize. So king takes is more commonly tried now. And now that king at least can't castle. And it's time to come forwards. And we want to play active now. And I think we just have decent compensation for the pawn. Now, we did try to make the idea c4, and this is something you might want to investigate yourselves. Pawn takes queen c2 work, but we couldn't quite make it work. But, you know, we may have missed something there. But we're going knight to here because it's just more straightforward and still keeping that energy and initiative alive. When black can either try run back with a king or centralize. So if he goes rook d8, we can demonstrate our plan. Knight takes e6, and now the queen comes in. And, you know, we're only a pawn down. We're playing against that guy there. If that guy tries to run away, there's a nice little tactic here that was played in the game Sanities, Folston, New York, 1924, knight c4 check. This knight is immune because of that one, and we're going to win our pawn back with a favourable piece structure there, with a good game. So that rook d8 doesn't seem to impress really. King f8 is an interesting idea, but now black has the other problem with this rook. I mean, it's not easy to find black and move here. Our simple idea is we move this knight, not the other knight, because our queen wants to come in, right? In this case, moving the other knight here it doesn't really work now. The reason we moved the knight here before was really to win a pawn on e6, but it's more important to get our queen in, hence why the f knight is jumping there. And after king f8 here, well, again, I like taking this. Queen takes is really the only try here. And now we want to keep that initiative going, and I like to move c3 in this position. There's no amazing knight jump we have. We might as well keep that x-ray against the queen as a threat. So let's open the lines up. We've gambited. Our opponent's king is weaker. Open, open, open. c3, often the catalyst to open the lines. And refusing black to settle. And after d takes, now knight takes. The queen comes to d6 and queen f3. And we've got the rook coming to d1. Two open lines. Black's a pawn up, but effectively a rook on h8 down. And if something like queen f6, we don't swap queens. Let's keep them on. And we can even start harassing the guys over there. And white has a big advantage in this structure. So queen d5 is a good try. We go bishop g5. And if bishop e7, we're just taking that one, which seems to give us an edge. Now, if bishop b4, we don't have the ideas and knight takes here again, but we can go for the move we just seen, which is c3. And after pawn takes c3, otherwise we're going to win this pawn back anyway. But it's probably better than pawn takes c3. What is the move you should be really playing for now? And this is the tactic, again, the common tactic in these lines. Remember, black's pieces in the middle may look secure, but they're on that, you know, thin thread that could break at any moment. And knight to f6 wins the queen because we have this pin here forever. And that's a nice little line. So now we come to what me and Richard think is black's best try, bishop d6, the most active. And there's no obvious way now we can, do anything quickly. Black's going to castle, but I think it's now time for this attractive move, bishop f6. And in this case, black has managed to get time to castle, but we're going to win the pawn back. So let's see what happens if he castles. He hasn't got time to play anything else. Why would he play something like bishop c5? If bishop c5, we see that standard trick again. What is the standard trick? Remember, black's pieces are really just really hanging on, and c4 is the move here. When they're really loose, look for c4 to undermine them. We've seen this idea before. So black, of course, castles, and now we play knight takes d4. And admittedly, this is not the most exciting of moves. Black's play very well. Black's defended in one of the best ways out of these whole lines. So we can't always get the fun, but this is our best choice. I mean, we'd love to play a move like queen d2, but this now runs into bishop b4. And even though black hasn't played this move many times in practice, we couldn't find a good idea. So we're going to go for knight takes d4. We're going to ensure we're not worse and ensure our pieces in the center can at least keep that pressure up. Now, knight takes d4 is obvious, but also rook e8. I think knight takes d4 is one line we'll first look at when we should take with the queen. And now, because of the threats on g7, black has to swap the queens off. And what can be said about this position? Well, you know, I'd be lying if I was going to say that it's a fascinatingly brilliant, interesting game here. And I think it's just fair to say that Black's played very accurately since our bishop d2 move. He's navigated a number of bullets here. And actually in the game Bronstein versus Mikhail Tal, so Tal found these lines as Black, Bronstein, two amazing players in 1979, they agreed a draw. But I think there's some play here still. And let's just investigate this a bit more. I mean, for a start, if we can take on d6, we're always playing on, if we can get this pawn structure. So, for example, bishop d5, we can take here. And after f3, yeah, it should be a draw, but we have a nibble. We have two pawn islands, or pawn masses. Black has 3. And generally the side with the more pawn masses is weaker, because those pawns they can't defend each other. And in this case, the pawn on d6 is a long-term target, and we can get all our pieces to attack it. So this is certainly a position I play on against everyone in. White has an edge here. So Black doesn't want to do that. Black should try. I mean, Black's still got these little problems to deal with. So maybe something like rook to d8 is better. And this position, well, this is one of the better moves, but again, he's got to find us. And here I think we should grab the bishop pair, because if that bishop comes back to f8, they've got potential. And now, of course, rook takes d6. And you could, again, be thinking dead draw. Dead draw. And if we're trying to win here, I think c3 is best. And why do we think White should have any chances of an advantage here whatsoever is a fair question. And the answer I'm going to try and convince you of is our bishop in the center of the board. And this bishop is better than our opponent's bishop. And we can secure that bishop there after something like rook d8, b4, stopping c5. And we also have chances to advance. The bishop blocks out our opponent's file. Our rook is better. We have slightly more advanced pawns. And something like a6, a4, bishop c4, and now rook e5. And this is following the game Gudina, Servat, Galsdu, 1986. And, you know, this is, again, it should be a draw. I'm not going to lie. But at least White is squeezing a little bit on the queen side with a more active bishop. Now, the way that you'd probably see the top grandmasters play this position is trying to now, because White has these slightly better pieces, trying to create a target on the king side. And I would be doing h4, h5, surprise. And then I might even try to create a pawn weakness in my opponent's camp by moving the rook here. The other way I can play it is obviously moving my rook to g3, all these kind of ideas. And we can still play on risk-free here for the win. But, of course, a fair assessment is equal. I mean, let's not lie. But more equal for White. Do you agree? Maybe you disagree. But I just like our bishop on that square. At least we have a target to attack. Our opponent doesn't. I mean, I quite like these lines. I mean, sometimes when I'm playing chess, you know, I want to, if I know the theory, I want to be, if I got it in my mind, and this is what a lot of top players do, don't get me wrong. They basically, in any opening, their philosophy is, right, I'm going to play these lines. If my opponent knows the theory, he's going to be equal, because chess is equal with correct play. But as long as I can play on in the final position, I'm going to play that line. And this is like any other opening where that's the case. Okay, so after bishop f6, let's just check castles. Now we go knight takes. Now knight takes we've seen. Now the last thing we need to look at is rook to e8, trying to keep some pieces on. Against this move, knight takes e6. Let's grab that bishop. And we can now take on d6. And rook e8 is basically not a very good move, because after we get rid of both of those bishops, bishop c3. And we've got now, if you compare this to that last ending, we've got this guy and we've got the bishop. In this case, I prefer the bishop. Why do I prefer the bishop? Because in the endings, bishops are better than knights when there's pawns on both sides of the board. Because a bishop is a long-range piece and can target both sides. The knight is a short-range piece, so it can only defend or try to attack one area of the board. So this is better for white. So hopefully you're convinced by now that this whole course is very interesting, and these ways of playing against e5 are clearly, I think, quite fascinating. And queen d5, the main move, we can still play that one. The last move I want to consider is bishop b4. And against this move, well, we're just going to take that one. And now black doesn't want to allow both our knights to sit here by taking with a knight. So he should take with a queen, trying to re-centralize. And now a very clever move, a3, offering a second pawn. And it's really like we're chasing that queen around so much, aren't we? Trying to force it to a bad square. Now, whenever your opponent offers you a pawn, you should be, you should treat it with respect and not just jump into taking it. And that's the case here. Does black take this one? Probably shouldn't, because now queen d3 is threatening to trap the queen with rook b1. So the queen needs to retreat. And now we go rook b1 anyway. And after queen a6, maybe this is black's idea. Black's thinking, yeah, I'm okay here. I don't mind doubling my pawns. I'm a couple of pawns up. But now rook b5. And this is threatening knight c5, trapping the queen. So b6, and here, now that black's pieces are all funnily over there, now we play knight on eg5. And let's say castles, we can take on e6 twice, and we have regained one pawn with an ongoing initiative here. And that knight's attacked. We have play against the queen side. Again, that nice compensation we're looking for in this course. So bishop b4, and grabbing that pawn seems dubious. So what about queen b6? And it's actually better to have a pawn here for black because you don't get these problems. Well, now we should transfer to knight g5 because that queen's out of play. And after we take on e6, white can regain the pawn, can play knight g5, but like that idea before, remember when the queen was there before and we played rook b1 with the idea of b4? Well, in this position, we don't have to play rook b1. I like the computer's clever suggestion of b4 straight away. We don't need to win the pawn back. Let's play against that queen, and this gains a useful bit of space. Now, after rook e8, queen d3, I like. Really making sure that queen can never join in. And let's go a little bit further. Well, maybe there's not any... It's not easy for black here. Actually, we're going to go knight g5 now with multiple targets. We're going to win a pawn back, but we kept this initiative over here. I mean, this is nice, right? We can even try, at some points, knight d2 to knight c4, just try and trap that queen. So queen b6 is not best, and I think black's best try is something like queen c4. But now we give it another little cat and mouse, b3. The queen should centralize here. If it goes to b5, we have knight takes d4, and after castles, we get this position, which again, black might be very happy thinking he's totally safe. But we do one of our favorite maneuvers, the rook swinger. And rook g3 coming. Our queen can sit very happily on c3. We have our other rook coming to e1 and our centralized pieces. Even h4 can be used, give us a definite little edge and attacking chances, even here. So queen d5 should be preferred. And after queen d5, we now find that if we go knight here, black has managed to get his queen in a good square and he's managed to defend the bishop. So knight there is not generally working when black's queen is so well structured. So we need to find other ways to play. And the other way to play is c4, the move to watch out for when the queen's on d5. If this is captured en passant, knight to f6 is a tactic we've seen. If the queen goes back to d8, well, I like just queen d3. And we're just going to slowly win this pawn back with those kind of nice endings we've seen before in a lot of cases. But the other idea of moving our queen here is that if black castles, he might be thinking he's out of danger, but now this knight really has purpose because our queen threatens checkmate, we're winning the pawn, and we're probably going to win 2 pawns here. There's a number of ways, you've got to wait often to the right opportunity to transfer one advantage into another, initiative into a material advantage. This is such a case. So after h6, which occurred in the game De Graaf Jonkman, Hoeveggin 2016, and now like knight c5, we can go the other way. Queen f6, and now just b4. And this is just threatening simply to take here, b5, rook e4. We're going to win a pawn back with a nice, I'd say, game. We're a pawn down, but we're definitely getting one back. For example, castles, well, we can push that one offside first, and now we can take this one and go rook e4, rook e1, and we've got a choice of which cherry to pick. Okay, well, I think now we've looked at everything, so let's just have a very overview of those ideas. This is another long video, but we've got to give justice to all the ideas, haven't we? And queen a5 is the main option. There's only one more move we're going to look at, and that's queen h5. But after queen a5, we're taken with a knight, and we're doing this for the reasons we discussed. We need to keep this knight active, and when we take the knight, we're often coming with bishop g5. Now, bishop e7 is a mistake because of bishop g5. Bishop e6 is best. And now, rather than the more popular move, knight here, we're going to ask and basically give black more problems with bishop d2. And this is now, depending where black moves his queen, where you have to decide which piece is going to go to the square. The general rule of thumb, if the queen remains on this file, if the queen remains in a place where it can get over to the king side, then we play the bishop to g5. Why do we do that? Because taken on e6 is less effective, and the queen remaining on these so-called active squares also keeps the target for our pieces to gain tempos to attack. If the queen goes somewhere passive, then it changes, because now this is much looser and we can't go and gain those tempos on the queen with our pieces. So this is when we transfer to moving the knight to this square. And whenever we do this, we don't take on e6 to the rook immediately. In nearly all examples, knight g5 is the better option. And again, there are some lines where black is just like equal, we have to say, in that opposite colour bishop one, but we can still play those positions on. And that is if black finds the right moves. It's so easy for him to go wrong. Other little tidbits to remember: if the queen ever comes to d5, we have c4. c4 is a great way to nudge that queen off guard. And I'm just showing you ways now where the queen could be moved. If the queen comes over to the king side, we have knight h4 often. When we played our bishop g5, a key idea is bishop f6 to stop that bishop moving, because we take on g7. And obviously putting the bishop here generally only works when the black queen is on d5 or on h5, because then if you take that bishop, we have a knight fort checking and winning the queen on one of those two squares. And, you know, even if you forget the theory, which, I mean, I'm probably going to forget some of this, but I'm hoping by, you know, going over these lines, I'm going to remember the general principles, and that is really important. And now we've hit the 1 hour, 15 minute mark for this video, so that's enough.